Welcome to 6G Agenda. I'm your host, Andrew, and I'm here with a special guest, Tony Arterburn from WiseWolf Gold and Silver. We're going to get into why those assets might be your best option here coming up soon, especially. Man, it's crazy. I mean, it was $200 an ounce back in 2001, and now we're at 4,000, an ounce this year. So, I mean, I wish that I got in whenever I was a kid, so it's crazy. Like we do, try to be like Bill Cooper. He had gold and silver was his main sponsor. So we try to follow suit. But yeah, welcome on, Tony. We're going to get into that, and welcome. Glad to have you.
Well, it's great to be here. I appreciate you having me on. And you mentioned Bill Cooper. It's just been a few days since it's the anniversary of his passing. Well, what you want to call it, a murder that happened to him in 2001 on November 5th, 2001. And in 2021, on the 20th anniversary, I did a broadcast from his driveway.
Really?
Yes.
I love it.
I broadcasted over WWCR, which was his home station. So I love Bill Cooper, and
wow,
learned a lot from him as a broadcast. I never got to meet him. Obviously, I was 21 in 2001, and I was in the military. So we wouldn't have crossed paths, but I learned a lot from the wisdom of Bill Cooper, and a great man, a great broadcaster, and certainly understood the issues with the Federal Reserve and fiat currency and how that is satanic.
Oh, 1,000%. Yes. Well, you're in good company, because that's we're trying to revamp kind of his work. I think he was ahead of his time. A lot of our themes run through kind of obviously this digital technocracy coming, but also the basis of it, Mystery Babylon, this long time Luciferian, what he talked about, the one world totalitarian socialist government that they're trying to build up. And I mean, tell me that's not what we see today, so it's he was on point.
So prescient. I mean, he was just way ahead of his time, and a natural. Of course, he was we're all troubled, but he was a combat veteran and Vietnam vet, and I think he just saw reality differently than almost everybody on the planet. And we're so fortunate to have had his voice, and it still resonates today. He was just really calling it as it happened. And it's so funny because today I noticed, like, Tucker Carlson put out an episode on chemtrails. I'm like, wow, we have crossed a barrier, and it's like all these other entities are finally catching up. And it's a question we ask ourselves: what else is ahead? Because this is stuff that we've been talking about for years and years and years, and finally something is happening, and with the consciousness of people worldwide. I'm interested to see what happens next. And Bill Cooper certainly set the tone for anything from UFOs to the New World Order to the one world totalitarian socialist government, like you said, and the technocracy and everything else. He set the tone and showed us what was next. And wow, it's really playing out. So it's an amazing time to be alive.
Yes, sir, it is. Exactly. And yeah, the Overton window is shifting very hard. With the 9/11, he's wanting to, get the commission for that going again. A part of me gets a little bit cynical because I do listen to Tucker even still with some skepticism. Because he had an episode with Alex Jones, and he said, "You predicted 9/11." And I thought that was odd, because I know he's got to know that Bill Cooper predicted 9/11. And he's got to know that, it was just kind of rubbed me a little weird. And since then, I've been just a little skeptical, just a little bit, CIA thing came out after. So, yeah.
Well, it's good to be skeptical, and we shouldn't have hero worship. But I think that the best way to play this in our current reality is when somebody puts their self out on the line and exposes something. If they do a good job, whether it's pro-liberty or pro-truth, I think we applaud them. People are a balance sheet. If they continue to add equity to their balance sheet and they get stronger and stronger, then we should applaud that and we should encourage it. Nobody's perfect. I mean, I've been wrong on certain issues coming up through the years, and certainly wouldn't have the same position. So I think when somebody does well, we applaud them. And I think especially in the alternative media community, it's important to have that nuance, because what we want is we want the truth. We want to win. and we want people to understand what the nature of reality. So I think that's good. It's good that you. I mean, I'm not a Tucker guy, but I just thought that was an interesting. And when he does well, I think that when he had that 9/11 doc and all the rest, I think that's great too. So we'll see what
Yeah, I
happens.
agree. Oh, I agree with that sentiment 1000%. And yeah, I think that with the CBDCs kind of coming these ways and everything, I know that accept Bitcoin and do that with the gold and everything. What's your take? Do you think that that's kind of because that was mentioned back then, right? Was the
Sure.
with Bill Cooper's and everything. So I just wonder. I'm very skeptical. I feel like gold and silver might be the only way forward a little bit, unless we just fully get rid of the Fed and everything else. But
I mean, I treat gold and silver as cash. Okay, that's my cash to me. I mean, obviously there's a convenience of actually having real, whatever fiat currency notes in your pocket that you can exchange right there at the grocery store. But to me, the real cash, the real money is gold and silver, and that's physical gold and silver bullion that you don't have there's no counterparty risk. You hold that, right? It's not in a stock, it's not in a paper trade, it's not in some or supposedly in some vault somewhere, like you own it. To me, that's cash, and that's completely outside of the system. You mentioned I do deal in Bitcoin too, and I think there's a lot of mystery surrounding Bitcoin. I love what it represents and what the minds that it's changed, and I love the scarcity of it. And it's totally antithetical to fiat currency. Um, but there's something that gold and silver does that Bitcoin can't do, and that's exist in this dimension. So I mean, obviously Bitcoin exists in a digital sense, and it's finite. But gold and silver, I mean, you can hold it in your hand. I mean, it takes energy, it takes work, it takes capital to pull that out of the ground, to mine it, to mint it, to ship it to wherever it's going. So that represents work and energy, and you can have that in your hand. And I think that's more important than ever to understand how that works and how gold and silver are actually cash in this timeline that we're on
yeah, I think you're correct. Am I correct in saying it's never not been right money? So all of time, right? So,
all of
I mean, I
time.
don't think that'll change, especially with how much it's going up recently. So, yeah, I've been kinda kicking myself. I first heard you, back probably a couple years ago, maybe, or whenever your first time was on tinfoil hat, and I think at that point, it was about 1,500 an ounce, maybe? And I was like, "Man,
Maybe.
I need to get into that," like, and just didn't pull the trigger. I just, the extra money, that kinda thing. I've always worked like the 9 to 5 kinda deal, so, whatever. And, so I just never put the extra money towards it, but now seeing where it is, definitely been kicking myself for it. So that's definitely gonna change, I think.
Well, good. I mean, and don't worry, you didn't miss the train.
I hope not.
De-dollarization is just getting started. The revaluation of all currencies and all commodities is just getting started. Welcome to the party.
That
It's
was gonna be my next question.
you're not too late. I mean, the philosopher Nietzsche talked about the transvaluation of all values. Well, now we're talking about the revaluation of all commodities and in a sense of money. And we're in price discovery. We're in price discovery of finite versus infinite. It truly is a monumental time to be alive and to watch this because we've been in a real-time experiment since 1971 and August 15th, 1971, when Richard Nixon interrupted an episode of Bonanza um, to take us off the gold standard. It was a Sunday night. And by the way, Bonanza is a show about people going out west to find gold and silver. I always thought that was ironic. He interrupted the episode to say he's closing the gold window temporarily. So temporarily, you know, 50 plus years later,
Right.
we're off the gold standard, and the dollar went from being money to being debt, and it's a magic trick. And so much of our reality is shaped by that decision to decouple. And we already had the deep state before, we had corruption and all the rest of that stuff. But you talk about throwing gasoline on the fire of that. That's the current reality. The system itself became an even more grotesque version uh, of that monster in 1971 because of fiat currency, because of the unaccountability of any kind of currency not backed by anything, the free for all, the printing press, the devaluation, the inflation robbing the average American, and not just the average American, but people worldwide of their savings and hard work, and separating the haves. There was the have-nots and the have-yachts, right? I heard that the other day on a podcast. I
Yeah,
thought it
that's
was funny, but that separation grows. The gap grows wider and wider, and the reason is because people don't understand the difference between currency and money. And to be honest, I study this every single day. I read histories on money and everything. I'm not sure I'm not an expert, so I can't, speak to say I understand it completely, because I don't. And money in and of itself is a philosophical question, like what is money? Matter of fact, there's a great podcast. I don't know the guys, and I listen to his Robert Breedlove has a podcast called "What Is Money." I recommend it because they dive deep into the philosophical implications of money. But we're in this new era, right, where they've floated the idea of a great reset. So we understand that the World Economic Forum, you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. And like, what does that mean? Well, it just means that we're reaching end game. The IMF, the International Monetary Fund, put out a post, or at least an article in the last month. I read on my show where they're like, by 2030, they always have these. By the way, these dates are always very important, whether it's Agenda 2030 or it's the Great Reset or whatever it is. This milestone year of 2030, the IMF says that all global debt will be on parity with global gross domestic product, so global GDP. Well, in the real world, we call that bankruptcy. If your debt matches your output,
mhm.
and that's because continue, and not just the United States, but governments in the world continue to print their currency to pay for the welfare and warfare states and everything else. And there's just less and less accountability of those currencies because politically uh, it's not feasible. And we've reached that here in the United States. We don't even talk about the debt anymore. When I was a kid, growing up in the 80s and 90s, that was all the rage. Like, talk about balancing the budget. You don't hear that at all anymore. And the wheels are off. And you can see that in our politics because a lot of it's a distraction. There's a lot of golden parachutes being packed right now. I was a paratrooper in the Army, so they're packing those golden parachutes for those CEO,
Mhm.
big wigs, and everybody else who understands that the new system's coming. And my job is, and the small part that I play, is to try to condense these complex subjects of what money is and what gold and silver have represented, what Bitcoin potentially represents, and see if I can help people. Because I think if you understand that, you're going to be way ahead of the game when the music stops.
1000%. So a couple things with that. Could you run us through the Jekyll Island kind of 271? What happened with the initial deal that was done? I believe it was signed overnight, like what, the middle of the night on December 24th, something like that. It was like a holiday evening,
Yeah, that's
if I'm
what it
not
is.
mistaken. And just like how that evolved, because I wasn't aware that 71, I guess I assumed that the gold standard, I didn't look into when the gold standard got lifted, so I kind of assumed that when fiat got started, it got taken away. So that's, yeah, I didn't do my history on that. So yeah, could you
Well,
explain
it's
kind of
a
how that
long
happened?
history. It's a long history of fiat has many episodes throughout human history, and it always ends badly. I mean, great empires, whether it's the Greek or the Ottomans or the Roman Empire, they always start out with sound money. Sound money represents hard money, which is like gold, silver, and they start out with that. They start out with economic nationalism. They make things, they produce things, and it ends with fake currency or fiat currency, and then free trade policies, which I'm all for free markets, but free trade and some of those policies are completely different things. It's you become a consumption nation and not a productive nation. You don't make anything, and of course, your currency loses value. So this is a story going back all throughout our history, and it ebbs and flows, and there's cycles. So if you go and look at, you mentioned the creature from Jekyll Island. The United States starts out uh, initially, after the Constitutional Convention, we had a gold and silver bimetallic standard. So they set that, in violet. It was 16 to 1 You had 16 ounces of silver make 1 ounce of gold in value at a silver dollar, and then we had gold coins. And so throughout the 1800s and 19th century, there was no inflation. So, like, if you went to see George Washington's inaugural in the late 1700s, if you bought a suit, that suit would cost the same in 1902. So we had no inflation. That's inflation. The myth of that, because we've grown up with it, in generations now. I've seen, like, oh well, when I was a kid, this cost X. I could go to the movies for a quarter. You hear your grandparents talk about stuff like that, or everything was cheaper. Well, they weren't cheaper. It's just your money, the currency that you use lost value. And I would even say to your audience that what you're watching is not necessarily gold and silver going up, because I hear that a lot, like number go up. It's
Mhm.
just the currency's losing. So the currency's going down. Gold, it devalued the dollar by 50% in the last 12 months. So that's why you got to look at it. It's an upside down. You have to invert it. So it's not like, oh well, gold's just becoming more scarce. It's not more scarce. I mean, necessarily. I mean, it's being bought up by central banks, it's being hoarded by multinationals and others who understand what's coming, because they want to revalue their own currencies based off of, what's the Great Reset, in my opinion. But you want to go back to Jekyll Island. So this was November 22nd, 1910, is 53 years to the day that JFK was murdered by the deep state in Dallas. And these elites, you have the Rockefellers, Kuhn Loeb, the Warburgs, the Rothschild family representatives, um, Senator Aldridge. You have all these players and people, J.P. Morgan. They set up this meeting off the coast of Georgia, Jekyll Island, and G. Edward Griffin wrote the book, The Creature from Jekyll Island. It's a great book, highly recommended. I got to tell him on air once that he was one of the reasons I went into the gold and silver business, and a great man, by the way, and a great author. So anybody that's, some dense, beautifully written history, Creature from Jekyll Island is your book. But it was a conspiracy. As a matter of fact, I went back and I was on AI a few months ago. I was on a show and I just typed in talking about the meeting, the secretive meeting on Jekyll Island. It's like, yeah, it was a conspiracy. The AI didn't know not to censor itself and say that it wasn't, but it certainly was. I mean, they had disguises and they didn't want anybody to know what they were actually doing. It's supposed to be they're out duck hunting or something, right? And what it was is we didn't have a central bank. We had one at the beginning of the country, and that didn't last very long in the beginning of the United States. And then we wouldn't do a second bank in the United States, and that's why we had the War of 1812. International banking interests have always tried to interfere and have interfered in our politics since day one. And by the time of Andrew Jackson, who was our seventh president, he hated the banks. He said, "You're a den of vipers and thieves. I'm going to rout you out. It's the last thing I do." And he actually wanted "I killed the bank" on his tombstone. Like, this guy hated the banks and hated what they represented. And he did. He didn't renew the charter. He killed the bank. And so we didn't have a central bank from 1836 to 1913. So you get this meeting on Jekyll Island, of all the banksters and the representatives, and they came up with a plan. It was to not have a bank, but they're going to have a new nomenclature, new language. And this is very important because they called it a reserve. And they say, well, we'll call it federal, right? It'll be a Federal Reserve and not a central bank, not a United States bank. And they did that on purpose because inside the consciousness of most Americans at that time, because of people like Andrew Jackson, we didn't want a bank, and we had a dollar as good as gold. I mean, what more could you want, right? If you're just a free citizen, why wouldn't you want to be able to save your money and save your energy and save your hard work and value into something that retains value? Well, that doesn't work. So if you want to manipulate the system, you have to have this central bank. So they came up with this plan, and it was a lot of skullduggery. It was very brilliant the way that they did it. and of course, you mentioned, Christmas Eve, 1913. They just gotten their a new president. They had Woodrow Wilson, who was backed by the banksters, and, a matter of fact, they also backed Teddy Roosevelt to make sure that Taft didn't win in the election of 1912. This was a plan put in place so that you would be able to have the policies of 1913, which were the income tax. You had the 16th Amendment. You had the 17th Amendment, which was the direct. We used to have the direct or the election of senators through legislatures, and they changed it to direct elections, which changed the dynamic of the state legislatures and their power, and gave it to special interest, and of course, election by bankers. Right? That's where we get
Yeah.
our election of senators. So we used to they were appointed, and that was the genius of the founding fathers. They wanted all these checks and balances. In a true republic, you don't have these mass elections like you do now. You would have something that is akin to the Republican idea, which is uh, checks and balances, and the legislatures controlling so much of that, which is you could go and you have this, more closer to the earth. You have the representative who's actually going to cast that vote, and instead of like what you have now, which is like billions and billions of dollars being poured into these states from outside influences and all the rest. But you had that, you had the first free trade policies under Wilson. And of course, you get the Federal Reserve. I call it the four horsemen of the political apocalypse. I've been saying that since 2012 or so when I ran for Congress. So I think it's important to understand that history. They passed, the Federal Reserve, and by 1929, they crashed the economy. We had the Great Depression. They'd used their influence, and it got their tentacles into everything, and they leveraged up the stock market. Matter of fact, Ben Bernanke, who was head of the Federal Reserve, Fed chair, in 2010 or so, came out and gave a speech. And he's like, "Yeah, we caused the Great Depression, and we're sorry about that. We won't do it again." Um, Understanding his history, I mean, it was kind of a wink and a nod that, yeah, it was direct. It was the direct influence of the Federal Reserve that caused the Great Depression, and then later on, it was blamed on tariffs. If you watch the movie Ferris Bueller's Day Off, you had Ben Stein, and there's a great he's teaching in that movie, in the scene where he talks about what caused the Great Depression, and they blamed it on Smoot-Hawley, which was the tariffs, which is ridiculous. It was caused by the Federal Reserve. It wasn't caused by tariffs, and so that's the beginning of the Federal Reserve. And by 1933, at the height of the Great Depression, you had the election of Franklin Roosevelt, and as soon as he was elected, he said, "You need to turn your gold in." He signed an executive order telling Americans to turn their gold in, made it illegal for you to hoard gold bullion. Uh, so you was basically you could keep certain collectibles, but at the end of the day, you got to turn your gold in, and they would give you a $20 note for this $20 gold piece. I mean, by the way, a $20 gold piece is worth over $4,000 right now, but $20 back then was $20, and it had been that way since the beginning of the country. And so people turned their gold in, and as soon as everything was turned in, or at least they had the bulk of it, Franklin Roosevelt, along with Harry Hopkins, who lived in the White House, much like Colonel Mandel House lived in the White House with Woodrow Wilson. There was a banker's agent. He and Harry Hopkins raised the price of gold to $35 an ounce. So they had the gold, and you had the paper. It's a great heist. And a lot of that gold went to the Bank of International Settlements in Basel, Switzerland, which was set up after World War One. It was the purpose of the bank was to receive the gold. It's always been about that. So they they changed the price. Harry Hopkins and FDR changed the price, and it made it illegal for you to own gold. But gold stayed that way, $35 an ounce. And of course, 1944, they had the Bretton Woods Conference in New Hampshire at the right at the tail end of World War II to set up the new economic world order. That's where you get the IMF, you get the World Bank, and the world's reserve currency becomes the dollar. So it's pegged at $35 an ounce for gold, and it stays that way until 1971. We had started taking the silver out of our coinage in 1965. Ironically, JFK wanted to keep the silver in the coinage and sign executive orders saying so. And ironically, he's the last president to be on the last silver half dollar, the 1964 Kennedy half dollar. I think they did that on purpose, by the
You
way.
brought up something I just have to stop you there just because I wrote this down for later. This is something I've always brought up to my friends. What you just said right there is exactly a theory that I've always brought up. Andrew Jackson hated the bank. You know, you had
Money.
Abraham Lincoln tried to make the greenback, you know, he obviously wasn't for the banks. The founding fathers being printed on the money, I mean, why would they be for a central bank? So it's like a slap in the face to put those people on it, and then also it makes the regular everyday people think, you know, just subconsciously that no, they're for this. They are for, you know, this is backed by their ideologies almost in a way. It's, you know, moral money almost because it's got their face on it. So yes, I do think that they did that on purpose. And nobody mentions the fact that he tried to stop that from happening. You know, they point to everything else but that.
Yeah, the only thing worse is putting living people on your currency. That's when you know you're in a true dystopia. It's like
Yes.
when
I
I
agree.
was part of the tail end of the invasion of Iraq, and I watched the currency die in real time. That was the first place they told me to go to the bank. We didn't even know what the hell was going on. Let's go to the bank in Mosul, and there's people running out with boxes of Iraqi dinar. Well, we invaded, and Mosul fell, so the entire country was under occupation. And overnight, the Iraqi dinar went to zero. And so people were out just running out of the bank with these boxes of Iraqi dinar, and you couldn't do anything with them. Nobody wanted them, but people would take the US dollar. Ironically, they won't, it's illegal to trade in US dollars now in Iraq. But
Oh yeah.
yeah, we're far from that. But I watched it. That was one of the curious moments in my life. I thought, well, what's happening? So I started, that's when the light bulb kind of went off. I went to studies and the history of money. And what does it mean? What does money represent? And of course, I mean, again, it's really bad. We've taught people floated like putting Trump on the currency, like a $200 bill or something, which would make sense because inflation's so bad. But
Right.
you put living people on there. That's really bad. But no, you're right. I mean, and JFK and Abraham Lincoln were the only two presidents in history that ever created notes direct from the Treasury outside of a central banking system, and they were both shot in the head in public. That's a quote from Jim Mars, by the way. And there's some great
Wow.
lectures by the late great Jim Mars who talked about that. So I don't think that's a coincidence. And ironically, even Lincoln was on the notes that Kennedy put out that were just from the Treasury, and they didn't
And
say
that's
Federal
what
Reserve.
yeah, and that's what they're perceiving to do. You know what I mean? Like they're doing like what he did is actually true to what it is. You know,
Right,
he's trying to do it, you know.
right. So, Kennedy was the last president that was trying to have some sort of fiscal sanity. And in 1965, we removed the silver. So we didn't have silver in our quarters and dimes and had some in the half dollars until 1970. But the world caught on because that's the kind of one of the first clues of debasement. This has been going on since all of recorded history. You start debasing the currency. So you inflate the money supply uh, that used to retain a set sound value, and you just increase it. And that's when the rest of the world and like France sent over their warship, and President de Gaulle in 1967 sent over their warships to pick up the gold and repatriate dollars. So you could take your dollars back in before 1971 if you're around the world and countries that they weren't subject to the executive order of Franklin Roosevelt, so you could trade those green pieces of paper for physical gold bullion. And that's what Richard Nixon shut down because the rest of the world noticed that we were debasing the currency and that we'd broken our promise and that we were outspending our production. So he closed the gold window and we became a fiat currency. We're living inside a real time experiment, which is obviously coming to an end, and there will be it'll be digitized. The dollar's not going to zero, it's going to digital. And we can get into that. I mean, a little bit of CBDC and stablecoin, at least my theories on what's happening. But the average lifespan of a currency not backed by anything, a fiat currency, is 26 years. So we've doubled that because we're the world's reserve currency, at least for now, and that's dwindling. There's something called de-dollarization going on. But again, gold was $35 in 1971, and by 1979, when I was born, gold was $800 an ounce.
Wow.
That's a big departure. And again, gold didn't go up. The dollar lost purchasing power. They did a lot of intervention in the late 1970s, early 1980s, and they just squashed both gold and silver prices through manipulation. And they got away with it for a long time, except now, to give you an example, the debt of the U.S. in 1980 was around $1 trillion. So it took us from 1776 to 1979, 80 to hit $1 trillion. Now we go $1 trillion in debt every 90 days. So the rate of acceleration is breathtaking, and they're racking up more and more debt. The dollar continues to be devalued. They print more and more currency. So that's why you're seeing, along with geopolitical tension and uncertainty, you're seeing gold reclaiming itself as the world's reserve currency. As a matter of fact, more central banks, they hold more gold now than they do US treasuries. That's a metric that just got passed. And the number one held asset by central banks is the dollar still, but that's dwindling. And the second most held asset used to be the euro, and that got supplanted by gold itself. So there's some interesting things that have happened in the last 4 or 5 years. You can see them setting up what will be the future, and the future will be a revaluation of all things, and there'll be some sort of backing by something. And those who understand that will, I think, be in a much better position. I mean, obviously, than those who don't. And those at the top with the most, the not to say they're intelligent, but they have intelligence, like working through intelligence agencies and simulations and stuff. They see that. That's why they float stuff like the Great Reset, because they're doing it. It's not like
Right.
an ethereal thing, and
Yes.
it's something that's really happening.
A plan in motion. So yeah, a few things on that. So what you seem to be kind of leading the tokenization of everything seems to be kind of what it's leading into. I definitely want to hear your theories on that. But my question also is with the gold notes, when people were given gold notes, they were $20. Then it goes up to 35. So they're thinking, okay, my money's my value of my money is going up. When in reality, I mean, they don't physically have the gold, so therefore, technically, I mean, they don't even have it. Like, can they ever cash out? I guess they could cash out on how much it goes up with the money that's devalued, the fiat currency, but they can't get physical gold for those notes
Yeah,
ever,
they've already
is what
turned
you're
it in.
saying. Yeah. So all
Yeah,
you
they
can get are coins, essentially, is what you're saying.
no, so in 1933, it was illegal for you to own gold. It wasn't legal for a United States citizen to own gold until, I think it was my birthday, well, not when I was born in '79, but '74. I think around December 26, '74, Gerald Ford
Oh,
made it legal for you to own gold again. So you couldn't do anything, like, even so. And what's funny is I talk about this all the time. There's a great many people that didn't turn their gold in, because I buy those coins every day.
right.
Like, those are pre-1933 US gold coins. A lot of people didn't turn them in.
Wow.
So, they just held on to it, and, good for them, because, by 1971, it's still $35 an ounce, and then boom, and we're off to the races. And, we're still in price discovery, because, so much has been clouded by, fiat and, by this experiment. So, you know, the overall picture here is you're just seeing everything being reevaluated through price discovery, and it has to do with the plan. And the average person is left out of that. They don't teach you about this in school. They don't teach you about what money is. Just the PSAs, the public service announcements, are like feed the pig. You see feedthepig.org or something, like put your money away for savings for a rainy day. Well, the super wealthy aren't doing that. They're buying assets. They're buying things that house value, whether that's real estate, businesses, production, gold, silver, Bitcoin, things like that. And the average person is like, well, I got $1,000. I'm going to put this away in savings. If you do that, you're going to be losing purchasing power. Is your $100 buy the same that it did 5 years ago? Of course not. So
Right.
it's something that they don't teach in school. And inflation, you think that's just part of everyday life. It's an inversion of the way that the economy actually should work. As a matter of fact, in a free market, And with sound money, you should have uh, deflation. Things should be costing less, not more.
So why is it taking so long? I mean, 50 years is a good amount of time for a lot of very intelligent economists to not speak about. Maybe was it just one of those things that everybody just kind of it was just a thing that everybody quietly knew about, but we just look past it and talk about inflation and the standards of the economy as if that's not even a reality that could be a thing, right? Like they just move on and forget about it. How is that? How is it something that like I had to learn by, watching videos or like looking things up myself? Like I know economists know this, or are they not taught this in school? Do they just maybe not know unless they dig into it?
Well, it's very cult like because you have Keynesian economics, John Maynard Keynes, and he said gold was a barbarous relic, and he had the economic theory that basically, you just print more, and there's this theory that if you need to goose the economy or you keep economic strength, then you just continually have new supplies of currency hitting the market. And in theory, it could work for a little while until it doesn't, because you end up, bypassing all logic and metrics and, math is a funny thing. Math doesn't care about your politics or your ideology or your pie in the sky belief systems. It just is. It'll eventually, you have to crunch the numbers and the numbers don't work. So you run out of room. And the the evil of fiat currency is that not only does it rob you, you have to work harder and harder to make less and less. And those that understand the system game it more and more. The, the fact that it creates and funds things that never should exist. Because in a sound money system, money's so precious as a resource and finite, you would balance budgets and you would allocate only the things that would deserve it. Or if they didn't work, you wouldn't continue to feed them. Well, you can feed things with the printing press, like a money printer go burr. You can do that, and that's why you have a deep state today that is unlike, we have a counter government inside the government that runs everything. It's the same principle because they're funded by it. The lifeblood of the deep state is fiat currency. The military industrial complex feeds off of it. The entire grotesque part of the system is its mother's milk is fiat currency. So I call them Luciferian bankster notes for a reason, LBNs, because that's exactly what it does. I mean, you had Donald Rumsfeld on September 10th, 2001, come out and hold a press conference because he was Secretary of Defense at the time and said, hey, we can't track $2.3 trillion. And we're going to find it because we got this accounting office opened over here at the Pentagon, which is exactly where whatever hit the Pentagon hit the Pentagon. So,
Mhm.
um,
Crazy
you
how
can
that works.
make your own decisions based. You can do
It
your
gets
own
it gets
research
hairy
about
whenever you get into that, you mentioned the gold that goes into the Bank of International Settlements, and then you see the, Catherine Fitz, she's out here
it.
talking about where some of that money might have went,
Well, it's like
and
they
again,
ramped
to
it
the
up.
deep state. What was that?
Well, they ramped everything up. Post
Mhm,
1971, you still had the ingenuity of the American people. You still had a lot of economic growth and other things that were propped up by the stock market. So it was kind of a free for all. So they used that economic engine to buy things. And then, Catherine Austin Fitz talked about the deep underground military bases and other things that were, the allocations for trillions and trillions of dollars that we never know where it went, right? What did it
right.
build? Was it a secret space program? Was it, what was it? The uh, continuity of government, the cog. What were they building? What are they building? And so there's just no oversight, and you can get that in a fiat economy for a while, right? Until the populace starts going, well, we're just the wealth gap widens and widens and widens. That's why they came up the last couple of days. They got the idea of a 50-year mortgage.
Mhm,
Like
yeah, 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 I know, that's
now introducing
crazy.
the monetized coffin because that's what you're buying. It's like you're not gonna
Yes.
live. I'm 45. I mean, I'm gonna
So
get a 50-year mortgage and be out of your mind.
so speaking of that, I saw somebody post that and this was some mental gymnastics. I wanna hear what you maybe this is sound, I don't know. They said it's the best idea ever because they're banking on the fact that everything's gonna fail, and so doing a 50-year mortgage, like, it's gonna end up working out for them, but if everything fails, I don't think that just means you keep your place, you know what I'm saying? But they essentially were like, you're betting against everything and how it's gonna go, so just do the 50-year mortgage," which was a crazy, like, backwards.
It doesn't really even, 20 more years of amortization doesn't really reduce the payment enough significantly. It just gets maybe just enough to get you in the door, and then
Right.
you're not really paying off that. So it's just a reflection of how the currency has become so debased. And matter of fact, if you price real estate in Bitcoin and you go over the last 5 years, it's like, well, how many Bitcoin did it take to buy a house, and now it's like 2. It used to be,
Mhm.
20.
Yeah.
And the dollar, though, it takes more and more dollars. And the same thing with gold. Like, how many ounces of gold did it take to buy a house? Well, it's interesting. Gold buys about the same amount of commodities today that it did 100 years ago. Same amount of oil, same amount of land, same amount of rare earth minerals, stuff like that. But the dollar doesn't. It's kind of like I mentioned the $20 gold piece. $20 gold piece in 1933 was $20, right? $20. But that gold had the purchasing power of about $4,000. So that's the difference between $20 then and $20 now. It's like the two things they just decoupled. It's a magic trick.
Yeah, I see what you mean. I fully see the inversion that you're talking about. That is crazy. Yeah, so it's just stayed constant. It is just value at its core. So what can our listeners do if we're going to be moving forward, working with you possibly? What could they do maybe looking forward? What do you offer at Wise Wolf Gold and Silver for your customers?
Well, I did something a little different because I had a bad experience when I first bought my first gold coin back in 2002. I was 22. I was just got back from Afghanistan, and I was going to have to go into Iraq, which was a terrible thing. I'd gotten married. I was a young soldier, and I had a little bit of money, like $3,000. I thought, well, I'm gonna buy some gold. I'd heard all the gold commercials on talk radio. So I called up one of the 1-800 numbers, and the guy found out I only had $3,000, and he's like, so he put me in some collectible piece of crap, like, and what they'll do is they'll take something that possibly has some collector value, whatever, and it's not about the metal, and then they'll put you in that, and they'll make a decent profit and send you on your way because you don't know what you're doing. Had I been with somebody ethical, they'd have put me in 10 ounces of gold. So, today I'd have 40,000 and not 3,000, or something like that if I'd have held on to it. So I learned a lot from my first interactions with gold companies. And by the time I started Wise Wolf, and this is just years of reading history and living through history and, having a passion for that. And I'm a student every day. I'm a student, never a master, always a student of this because it's ever changing. But I just took the whole model and I just tilted it on its head. I like to do that. It's fun. Like, I think the most of the big companies, if you call them and you got $500, they don't care. You call them and you got $5,000, they might care a little bit, but it's not. So the principle that I went by is I still do the big deals. I do, like, people are rolling over 401ks and IRAs and all that stuff, and we put them in physical metals. But I just said, hey, you got $50? I'll put you in the best $50 package that I can. I'll take your $50 and I'll convert it into silver half dollars, silver dimes, 10th ounce silver pieces, gold backs. I'll do something to where if you just set that aside, then you've got something of real value, hard money, from a trusted source. And now we've got close to 1,400 people that buy from us automatically all over the US through something called Wolf Packs. I have Wise Wolf, Gold and Silver, and we have Wolf Pack. It's not an infomercial, but this is something that we do every day. I have a great crew here in Missouri. I have a shop in Texas, but I'm in Missouri right now, and my crew packs these packages every day. I'll go over the invoices and say, okay, we bought X amount of whatever this is, and this goes in this package, but we have from $50 all the way up to 5,000 and everything in between. And you can put it on automatic. You can buy one time, and we just take your funds and see how much gold and silver I can pack in there.
Mhm.
And so it's a different model than what the big guys have. And we are small business and everything. So I that's my contribution to helping the average person. And like if you got 50, if you got 200, you got 500, whatever, you can set it aside. Let me pick your metals for you. And I'll send them to you direct to your door. It's not like a long drawn out process. It's not paper. Like you're not getting stock. You're just getting real metals. And there'll be a variety of metals in there. It won't be just one thing or one chunk of anything. So, and a lot of times I'll get collectibles and I don't charge the collectible price. I've been putting we've been putting silver dollars in some of the $50 packages. Every once in a while I'll get a load of silver dollars and I'm like, some of those silver dollars are worth more than 50, 60, 70 bucks. Maybe more. There's collectibles in there. I don't care. I bought them for, the silver melt and I'll just pass them on to you. It's about speed. I don't have time to sift through collectibles, but the average person, if you can just set aside something, you'll get something from me that'll be beyond your package, or beyond the invoice. I promise you that. It happens all the time. So we just set this automatic buying system up, and we got over 1,000 plus 5-star reviews. I mean, it's really cool.
That's
So
awesome.
that's one of the things that we've done, and we also you can trade in Bitcoin. We take Bitcoin direct. I don't charge a fee, so no friction at all. If you got 500 in Bitcoin, you want to set over and buy 500 worth of metals, great. I'm going to put that Bitcoin on my balance sheet. If you want to buy Bitcoin, I'll sell it to you. So all those things coalesce, and we're just here to help the everyday people that understand this and that don't want to get caught in the fiat trap, because the fiat is just going to continue to debase. I don't make the rules, but that's what they're going to do. When you talk about, look, when you swipe your credit card, that's currency creation. This new currency being made. When you get a home loan, used to be fractional reserve banking is what we talked about. Now it's not even that. It's literal currency creation. When you buy a home, you get a mortgage. That's why they talk about it. So the whole thing survives off debt. So if you step out of that system and you start saving things that are finite, that can't be reproduced easily, uh, Bitcoin can't be reproduced at all. But gold and silver, I mean, you can still mine for it. You can still get a new mother lode or whatever somewhere, and could have a bunch of gold and silver hit the market. Unlikely, but that is possible. Um, but fiat currency is just unlimited. It's like, how many dollars are there? The answer is more. There'll just always be more dollars. So when you have more of something, the value goes down. It's just basic economics. And so this isn't like really a hard problem to figure out. It's like, if you're working and you're expending your energy and you want to save and house something in value, gold and silver are a great way to do that. Bitcoin's a great way to do that. And there's other things too. I mean, you can have your own business or you can invest in yourself, but the money that you're being paid in, it's like 1964. The minimum wage is about $1.25. Well, a buck 25 in silver quarters today is about 36 dollars. Okay. 36, maybe $40. So that's what it would have been in purchasing power an hour in
That's
1964.
crazy.
We don't
Yeah.
have a minimum wage problem. We have a currency crisis.
Right.
That's why it takes more and more work to make less and less, and you're on this hamster wheel. And so just stepping back, if you're able to take what you've earned and then at least stop the devaluation, then you're in good shape. And a lot of younger people that are priced out of housing now, regardless of the 50-year mortgage, when they're buying Bitcoin, things like that. I read articles on my show all the time.
Yeah,
They're
that's
just
kind of
smart.
where I fall into. I'm unfortunately, right whenever I was ready, everything started to, yeah, it's finally hit, the after
Mm.
COVID
Yes.
crazy market rise that happened. So yeah, that was another catalyst that got me. Like I was already researching and stuff into everything, but it got to a point where I just got deeper into what I'm kind of into now. I wanted to kind of start to speak about it because I feel like yeah, it's there's more people out there than you think that have the same situation. So the more that kind of understand that they're not alone, maybe the more that are more likely to say something as well. And that's kind of my concept of how it works. You know what I mean?
Yes.
But yeah, that's a great deal to to work out to make sure to at least secure some of your energy, which is very important. Your energy that you put in and your time, which are the two most important things in this world, uh, as far as what you have. So definitely want to make sure it doesn't just turn into something that's worthless as a couple months go by. Yeah,
Well,
definitely. That's wild. What one more time?
yeah, it's true. I mean, it's just basic, you know, being frugal and understanding, like, if you're gonna have a savings account, it needs to be liquid, needs to be something you can touch, something you can cash out easily and recognizable, and that's where physical gold and silver bullion, are a really good way to do that.
So, say somebody was spending 50 a month, would you is there a way where, when they kinda say they do 50 a month and then 6 months goes by, whatever, or, do you kind of let it build up to a certain amount and then send it to them? How do you kind of operate? Is it a one payment thing?
Just send it right away. Yeah, I don't keep anybody's packages unless they ask
Gotcha.
me to.
Right.
We send it right away, and that's something for you to just start your stacking, and then
Yep.
hold it as long as you can because, whatever premiums you paid to get that silver, you're gonna wanna let the price rise enough to offset any premiums, and then you just got, like, I've had people call me up, they're like, "I bought in 2020 from you, what's it worth now?" And I'm just doing calculations, I'm like, "Well, you're up," had a lady bought 20,000 from me in 2020, and I was reading her stuff, I said, "Well, you got about 38,000 in
That's great. It's
savings right now,"
double
'cause that's
almost.
crazy. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just yeah, because of the price of metals and gold was 1,500 bucks an ounce or whatever when she bought it from me.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, I'm
44,000
from,
bucks.
I'm from, Missouri, and, so that kinda stuck out to me whenever I heard you mention that you guys are based in Branson, Missouri, and, the WiseWolf name is kind of funny because 'cause I've always had an affinity, especially my family, because of my grandmother for wolves, so I was like, "Man, I hope I could do some work with this guy, he seems great, veteran." Happy Veterans Day, by the way, today. Thank you for your service. And, I just thought, yeah, you seem like an awesome guy, really knew his stuff. You even started talking about like mystery schools and everything during a podcast when you're talking about gold and silver. And I'm like, man, this is a perfect guy for somebody that I'd like to talk to. So yeah, that's awesome. Glad to have you on. And I definitely want to have you on again and do some more work with you and everything. And hopefully we can work out a deal. I don't know exactly what, you just like do like a you know, 6G/6G agendas that way, they is there any package you do if they come
Yeah.
through us?
Yeah, just, we're done. Well, we'll get you an affiliate link, and, pretty much anybody can do this with me. You wanna become an affiliate, we can sign you up, and then it shows you in real time when somebody signs up, and then we just pay you a percentage of anybody that signs up. So it's a really cool way, just to make a little extra money, like just sharing our platform, and,
Oh,
you
definitely.
get to see, your the accruing and there's not a lot of margin in gold, so it's not because 'cause I'm selling coffee, it's
Mhm.
not like the percentages, so it's a lower percentage, we usually pay like 1 or 2%, but that adds up, So, I mean, it was
100%.
10,000 bucks, about 100 bucks, something like that you would make, so, it's not that hard to hit 10,000 or 20,000 in gold and silver sales, just not a lot of margin in it, it's not like we're making a lot, but, yeah, we
Yeah, no, I'm
definitely do
super
that.
interested in I definitely just love the idea of, helping people work out a package that you offer like that because like you said, most people that wanna work in gold and silver have to have some kinda retirement to roll over, a bunch of savings, and I think that they're, more for just people, everyday people that, just work a regular job, maybe got 50 bucks a month or a week that they wanna throw in there. I think that that's really awesome that you do that, so glad to be working with you for sure, and
I'd love
hopefully,
to.
people take advantage of it.
Oh, I hope so. I mean, we got great customers. I got a great crew, and I'm just about the size I want to be. But I'd love to continue to grow Wolfpack because I'm helping people. I mean, it's just
Mhm.
taking those LBNs and turning them into real money is a lot of fun.
Doing God's work. What's your baby girl's name? I forgot.
Oh, this is Beans. This is my 9-year-old Chihuahua mix from the mean streets of San Antonio.
Hell
She
yeah.
she goes
Hell yeah.
everywhere. She's on all the logos and the stickers and the pins, and everybody gets to
Mhm.
see Beans the Brave. We put her out on everything, so she's, getting ready for supper time, so she was, climbed in my lap because she was like, "Hey, where's Where's
Oh yeah.
dinner? Her little clock in her head was like, it's about time.
Well,
Time.
that's perfect because we're about to end, but yeah, I'll let you get to feeding her. But I will say, that's a sign of every badass is having a little puppy with him. Just a little
So
baby, little
you
small
can be
dog.
incongruent, but
Yeah,
the old combat veteran paratrooper. Yeah, I got
yeah,
the little dog, and I never thought I'd be the guy with the little dog, but she is an amazing friend, and we traveled so many places together. You can catch us. So we were on Tinfoil Hat last time we were in Cali. She sat on the couch and just was chill for
that's
the couple of
awesome.
hours we did the show.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, well, hopefully, people check you out. Wise Wolf Gold and Silver, Tony Arterburn. Definitely go check out his podcast as well. Where can they find you?
Just go to Tony.gold is a great place to start. That's where find my radio show, my podcast, Paratruther, and links to Wise Wolf. Or you can just go to wolfpack.gold is a great website. Just type in Wise Wolf. You'll be able to find us. I promise. We have
Oh yeah,
too many websites because I have 2 locations. It just gets messy, but we got a bunch of stuff out there. And you can
that's
always give
awesome.
us a
Awesome.
call.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on. Everybody go check him out, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for coming and chilling with us on this episode 6G Agenda, learning some about the history of money and how you can kind of secure yours. So we'll see you next time. Thank you.